Welcome to Neon Cobra. Let's kick into it. So this is going to be a follow-up to last week. So if you haven't watched the tags video, I'll link it below, but make sure you give that a look. So I kind of alluded in that video that we're actually going to look into leveraging tags in a very unique way. So to kind of preset or precursor this, interestingly enough, when you're working in Azure with a CSP, right, as an MSP, which I'm hoping you are in this case, you're going to find that reservation notifications are disabled. So there is a feature in Azure to set notices when your reservations expire. But the problem is that is set from the billing profile level, which unfortunately at this time, at least in our experience, is controlled by the CSP themselves, right? So the distributor. Now, this is difficult because sure, they may be able to set that value, but when you're dealing in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Azure plans across hundreds of thousands of clients, it can be very difficult to set those at scale. So what I've come up with a way to leverage Azure tags to create Azure budget alerts as early warning systems of failure. So the easiest way we're going to show this, and again, precursor to the previous video, because there are some delays in getting this set up, but we'll run through this quickly. So moving into the Azure portal, I'm going to have you go over to budgets. Now you can search for this at the top. You can get through cost manager, whatever the case may be. Now you're going to want to set it on the subscription in question that you have your reservations in. So if you've got multiple subscriptions with reservations kind of set across them, you may have to replicate this a couple times. Now I have a demo one in here that we'll click into a little bit later, but I'll show you how to get this established. So you're going to choose add at the top. You're going to choose filters, and those filters, you're going to go down and choose tags. Now, in yesterday's video, I created a tag called reserved, and I set that value to 1. And what I've done is I've added that tag to every virtual machine that I'm hoping to have a reserve instance applied to. Now, what this is going to do in Azure Budgets is going to assess that system, and it's going to filter down to just that on consumption costs. Now, if you have seen my previous videos on Azure Budgets, what you're going to find is that reservations do not show up under Azure Cost Manager or Budgets. And I will caveat at this time, this is June 18th, 2025, right? This could move at any one point. But as it stands now, if you're buying reservations, they roll in as marketplace purchases, which means they do not show up in Cost Manager, which means they do not show up in your budgets. So the theory is if I have a virtual machine that I am flagging with a tag of reserved equals 1, which I've set right here, the value, if properly protected by a reserved instance, should be 0, which means the second a reservation fails, a notice will go out because it starts to consume. Right? So I managed to test this in a controlled environment. I would like to see this at scale. This is all very theoretical, but if everything works the way as intended, you should receive a notice upon failure. So you set your tags to what you've marked your reserved instances and your reserved virtual machines for. You name it. So test RI2. You set your monthly period, you set your expiration dates, and you set your budget amount. So I'll set $5, right? It doesn't really matter. The idea is that the second there is any consumption, right, the forecasted amount will trigger, and your consumed amount will trigger as well. So you'll set that. You'll choose next. You can set your actual to be 100% of budget. You can see your forecasted to be 100% of budget. And, if you have previous action groups set up, and if you're unsure how to do this, check my budget video. Also, I'll link below. And it talks about setting up action groups. So you can just set those up. And you can set alert emails as well. So this can be your support desk, right? Your help desk, anything like that. So, we'll just say like test at Neon Cobra, right? .ca, sure. Not a valid domain. You get that set up, and then whenever this is breached, you will receive a notification saying your forecasted amount, your projected amount. So the concept of this is you set these budget alerts in play for any consumption on these tagged resources. So the second a reservation lapses, it goes back to the pay-as-you-go model, assuming there's no savings plans or any in place to also pick up the consumption. So when that happens, immediately you'll receive a notice, which can create a ticket if you funnel it into your PSA, and then you can go in and buy the new reservation. So the loss of funds at that point would be minimal. So until Microsoft provides a way to really give you the ability to notice a reservation is gone, especially when you're managing a lot of these at scale, this is likely the way to go about this. Just track it for the time being. Now, because you're able to have numerous budgets, you can have your full budget and you can have these alert budgets as well to protect your reserved instances. So a few notes. When setting up the tags, it can take up to 24 hours, I've noticed, but as early as maybe an hour or two for them to be available to be chosen in the budget video. So it took me about a day to get them to show up in the flag section here, right? The tags. I'd created them, I'd added them, but they still weren't showing up as available filters. So give that time to propagate. Additionally, once you set these flags, it can take another 24 hours for your first run. Now, the budgets only run every little while. So usually within the day, you will catch that. So damage will be minimal, right? The risk I hear a lot of times is you'll receive an invoice the next month, realizing the reservation expired at the first of the month and you received a notice. Now, you will also receive notifications if you have baseline budgets in play. If I'm expecting the environment to cost $2,000, the assumption is that environment shouldn't cost more than that and that the reservations were extracted from this. But it's still nice to maybe have a second one in play because it's much easier to have an easy, quick conversation with your client saying, hey, these just expired. We haven't had time to meet. Do you want to re-up for 3 years? Or are we okay with pay-as-you-go rates until we have our meetings, right? This will allow you for a little bit more wiggle room, gets you in good graces with your clients, and protects you overall. So that's the quick and dirty. They may at some point be a better way to do this. If you have a better way to do this, I'd love to hear. This is just kind of a creative way I've been able to find to track this kind of stuff. So with that, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next time.